The Reed property is personal. My father lost everything because of that old man's interference. I don't care what it costs. I want that land, and I want to destroy his family the same way they destroyed mine." Suddenly, the truth was laid bare. This wasn't about environmental safety or community planning. It was revenge. 25 years in the making. The financial trail read like the budget of a hostile takeover. $180,000 to Steele labeled community legal services, $75,000 to a private investigation firm, $45,000 to a media company producing fake videos, and $200,000 marked as property acquisition fund a pending closure. Nearly $500,000 poured into a scheme built on fraud and intimidation. As I scrolled through the files, fear gave way to something stronger, resolve mixed with righteous anger. "Lily, a broken bar. Why are you risking this?" I asked quietly. "You could lose your job or worse." Tears welled in her eyes. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because my little sister loves coming to your lake with our dad to fish. I can't let Cassandra file fake reports about kids just to steal your land." With this evidence, everything shifted. They'd threatened me with a $2.5 million lawsuit, but now I had proof of federal crimes: mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, and using falsified evidence to harass. "Lily," I said, for the first time in days feeling a genuine smile creep onto my face, "I think Mr. Steele will be very interested to see exactly what his client has been doing." The next morning, I took Steele's threatening letter, tore it into pieces, and watched the shreds scatter in the breeze. "Ranger," I whispered, scratching behind his ears, "Grandpa taught me more about standing up to bullies than I realized. Time to show the Ho Queen what happens when you threaten the wrong family." But when I fully opened that USB drive, I found one last hidden file Lily had tucked away, and what it contained wouldn't just remove Cassandra from power. It could put her behind bars. "BD Stories family," I posted online. "Comment what you think that terrible secret could be broken bar." Instead of backing down, Cassandra decided to double down and launched the most desperate plan yet. She convinced VIP guests she was organizing an official community tour of shared green space, complete with permits. Her goal: stage an impressive public show to prove community ownership. Among the guests were Senator Patricia Blakey campaigning on environmental issues and two local investors curious about eco-friendly development. Cassandra pitched it as official HOA business. The morning of the tour, I watched from my porch as she staged an elaborate production, professional lighting, branded banners reading Emerald Cove Community Green Initiative, and even a catered lunch. The investment wasn't cheap. Then came the parade, the senator's black sedan, the investors' expensive cars, and finally Cassandra herself, perfectly styled, stepping out like she owned the world. "Good morning, everyone," she announced into a live stream. "Welcome to this special event showcasing Emerald Cove's environmental stewardship." At first, the stream showed around 50 viewers, mostly home members. But the VIP guests looked uneasy, glancing at locked gates and private property signs. Senator Blake leaned toward her aide, whispering, "I thought this was community property." I walked down with Ranger to the gate. "Good morning, Senator." "Miss Kane, these folks are on private property without permission. I'm going to have to ask everyone to leave." That was Cassandra's breaking point. With the live stream running, she lashed out, "Everyone, you're witnessing obstructionist behavior. He's blocking legitimate access to shared community resources." Viewer numbers started to rise. Senator Blake turned pale. "Get the car ready," she told her aide. The investors began retreating toward their vehicles. "Cassandra," one of them warned, "if there's a property dispute, we can't be involved." With the VIP guests leaving and live comments flooding, "Ina, is this even legal? And this looks like trespassing." Cassandra's months of careful planning and investment began to unravel. Then it happened. Cassandra rushed forward, screaming, "No, you can't leave. This is community property." She tripped over a camera cable, caught herself awkwardly, and the viewer count shot past 1,500. The chat exploded. "She's lost it. Call the police. This is insane." Face flushed, hair coming undone, she screamed into the camera, "I have every right. My family deserves this land. We've been cheated for 25 years." A personal vendetta, broadcast live to thousands. Senator Blake's car pulled away. The investors drove off, Cassandra stood alone, humiliated, before 2,800 viewers. Her secret now out for the world to see. Something inside Cassandra, just a broken bar, snapped. She stormed over to the pink SUV, eyes wild. "You want obstruction?" she shrieked. "I'll show you real obstruction." The engine roared to life, tires screeched, and the pink tank launched forward like a missile, slamming into my steel gate. The impact was deafening. Metal twisted, sparks flew, the bumper crumbled, airbags exploded. Ranger barked, panicked. I leapt back just in time. The livestream view count surged to 5,000. Comments flew across the screen. "She rammed the gate. Call 911. This woman's insane." People clipped the footage, tagged friends, and shared the chaos in real time. Cassandra staggered out of the smoking wreck, hair tangled, makeup smeared, suit torn. She looked like she'd walked out of a war zone. Her first move, grabbed her phone, is still live via, and called 911. "Emergency, I need police. There's a man blocking community access. He made me crash." Even the dispatcher sounded baffled. "Mama, broken bar. Did you crash? Are you hurt?" Radiator steam hissed behind her. Bent steel creaked. The live stream viewer count climbed past 7,000. "I am Cassandra Kane, HOA president," she shouted at her phone. "Arrest him, he's blocking community property." Minutes later, Officer Dave Peterson arrived, dispatched for a suspected vehicle crash and possible mental health crisis. He stepped out, surveyed the wrecked gate, smoking SUV, private property signs, and me standing quietly with a confused-looking dog. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "please end the live stream and step away from the vehicle." "Are you injured?" "Officer, arrest this man. He caused my crash. He blocked legitimate community access." 8,000 people were watching as Cassandra ranted and pointed wildly. Peterson looked at the gate, then at the private property signs. "Ma'am, this appears to be private property. Do you have permission to be here?" That was it. Cassandra gave away everything on camera. "Permission? I don't need permission. My family deserves this land." Peterson exhaled, pulled out his handcuffs. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for criminal damage, reckless driving, and trespassing." She was still yelling as he guided her to the patrol car. Ranger watched quietly, ears tilted, and standing among twisted metal and scattered livestream gear. I realized something. Sometimes justice doesn't need help, it just needs witnesses. By then, 10,000 people were watching, and that was just the beginning. That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Reed?" a shaky voice asked. "This is Robert Kane, a broken bar, Cassandra's husband. I need to meet tonight. I have information you need to hear." He sounded like he hadn't slept in days. At midnight, Robert arrived in an expensive BMW, still wearing his law firm suit. His face looked 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. "Mr. Reed," he began, voice low, "I'm here with my attorney's knowledge. I need immunity protection for what I'm about to tell you." He handed me a business card. "This is my lawyer. He can arrange it." Then Robert opened his briefcase and everything I thought I knew flipped upside down. "I've been a corporate lawyer for 20 years, he said. "I built my reputation on ethics. What Cassandra's done violates everything I believe in." Inside the briefcase were documents, bank statements, emails, an entire paper trail. "Grandview Development Consulting," Robert explained, "is a shell company I created for legitimate property investments. Cassandra took over the accounts without authorization. She spent over $500,000 on this vendetta against you. Payments to fake environmental consultants, private investigators, bribes to city inspectors, even paid social media trolls to smear my name. She's been obsessed with this property for years," Robert admitted. "Ever since your grandfather's land deal supposedly ruined her father's development business 25 years ago." He handed me psychological evaluation notes from their marriage counselor. Pathological resentment, a broken bar, revenge fantasies focused on the Reed family, a broken bar. And then it got darker. Cassandra had hired investigators to dig up fake inheritance claims, paid for forged environmental hazard reports, bribed city officials to file endless bogus code violations. "I tried to stop her," Robert whispered. "I threatened divorce, cut off funding, warned her she was risking prison. But she kept going." He showed me a folder an inch thick, 12 families over 8 years forced to sell below market value. Same playbook every time. Intimidation, fake violations, public shaming. It started small, Robert said. Just 20 homes for lake access. But after your grandfather died, she wanted a casino resort. She forced sales on the Thompson farm, the Miller estate, a broken bar, all of them. Finally, he handed me a final folder. Evidence of an organized criminal conspiracy. Emails, contracts, bribes. All of it. I'm ready to testify, Mr. Reed. A broken bar can't keep this secret anymore. In that moment, looking at a broken man willing to help destroy everything his wife had built, I realized, this wasn't just about land. This was about power, obsession, and what happens when revenge becomes your only purpose. And the story was far from over. After the HOA increase vote, Robert said, Cassandra completely unraveled. She started talking about finishing what father couldn't. Robert's voice broke. My wife became someone I didn't recognize. The evidence he handed over was staggering. Financial fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, bribery, harassment, even campaign finance violations, and actual recordings of Cassandra admitting to crimes. These files cover everything, Robert said hoarsely. Wire fraud, racketeering, federal conspiracy charges, enough to put her away for decades. Tears welled in his eyes. I still love my wife. A broken bar, but she's consumed by this obsession. I can't stand by and watch her destroy more lives. Our marriage is over, but maybe justice can keep other families from suffering. You could see it all on his face. The heartbreak of loving someone who destroys themselves with hatred. Then came the bombshell that made everything click into place. There's something else about your grandfather's death, Robert said. Cassandra never got over the story that your grandfather ruined her family unfairly. But that wasn't the truth. Robert pulled out old municipal records and court transcripts. Her father was corrupt. Your grandfather's testimony stopped Kane Development from building a casino on protected wetlands. Those wetlands fed drinking water to 3 counties. Cassandra's father had bribed inspectors to ignore violations. Your grandfather saved this region from an ecological disaster, Robert said softly. He was a hero. Cassandra's been living a lie her whole life. You convinced your family were villains, when the truth was the opposite. With Robert's cooperation, the investigation exploded into something far bigger than a family feud. The FBI white-collar crime unit got involved due to the scale of fraud. Multiple state agencies launched parallel investigations. The Thompson and Miller families stepped forward with their own evidence of intimidation and forced sales. What started as one woman's vendetta had uncovered a sprawling network of corruption involving dozens of officials and developers. Robert agreed to testify, surrender everything, and make full restitution in exchange for immunity as a whistleblower. The professional lawyer in him was protecting himself, but the personal cost was written all over him. Sitting across from the man whose wife had tried to destroy my family, I finally asked the question hanging in the air, Robert, why didn't you stop this sooner? He looked up, haunted. Because I never thought she'd go this far, he whispered. I thought love could cure obsession. I was wrong. But there was still something Robert hadn't said yet, something about my grandfather's death that hinted this conflict had been brewing far longer than anyone realized. 6 months after Cassandra's pink tank crashed through my gate, the legal dominoes kept falling. With Robert's mountain of evidence and Cassandra's livestream confession watched by thousands, of prosecutors offered her a plea deal. Plead guilty to reduce charges, serve at least 18 months. Pay $500,000 restitution, and accept a permanent restraining order banning her from any HOA leadership. The alternative? A federal trial and over 10 years in prison. She took the deal without hesitation. Professionally, she was destroyed overnight, her real estate license permanently revoked, banned from HOA boards statewide, forced into bankruptcy to cover legal fees and restitution. Robert filed for divorce and won uncontested due to her criminal record. Even the pink SUV was auctioned off to pay damages. Watching it get hauled away felt oddly satisfying, a gaudy monument to entitlement finally meeting reality. The community response was mixed to more real, less like a fairy tale ending. Eleanor Walsh led a reform faction, demanding a full financial audit of the HOA's last 5 years. But around 30% of residents still defended Cassandra. claiming she was only trying to raise property values and that I had brought negative attention to the neighborhood. When the vote to remove Cassandra as HOA president came, it was 68% in favor. A decisive victory, but not the unanimous rejection you might expect. Real communities aren't that simple. Some neighbors came over with apologies, homemade cookies, and offers to help fix the gate. Others stayed cold, blaming me for making them look bad on national news. Perfect resolution is for movies. In real life, progress comes slowly, with bruises and lingering resentment. The FBI investigation didn't stop with Cassandra. They discovered a pattern of HOA corruption stretching across 3 states. Robert's Grandview Development shell company triggered probes into similar scams that had forced hundreds of families to sell below market value over the past decade. And Cassandra herself became a federal witness testifying against a network that reached far higher than anyone had imagined. Developers, city inspectors, even state legislators. It turned out local officials had been taking bribes to push through zoning changes. Inspired by my refusal to back down, the Thompson and Miller families came forward too, filing a joint lawsuit against the developers who'd forced them to sell. What began as a single fight was turning into a potential class action. More families uncovered the same pattern of harassment and fraud. My choice to fight had opened the floodgates. Lawyers lined up to represent victims on contingency, and national media picked up the story as a symbol of HOA overreach running wild across America. Property rights groups used my case to lobby for HOA reform laws in a dozen states. I reluctantly agreed to a few interviews, and not because I liked the spotlight, but because I hoped it might help someone else. But fame comes with its own price. Being right doesn't mean being popular, and the attention was exhausting. Still, the biggest victory was unexpected. My property received state historical landmark status, legally shielding it from future development. Ironically, Cassandra's campaign triggered the very protection she'd tried to prevent. Property values around the lake even rose, benefiting the same neighbors who'd once opposed me. Sometimes, good things do come out of terrible situations. Under Eleanor's leadership, the new HOA board introduced real reforms, publishing monthly financial reports online, recording open meetings, and requiring resident votes on any expense over $5,000. Lily was hired as the new communications coordinator, committed to transparency. At the first community meeting, she gave a public apology for helping spread Cassandra's fake evidence. People respected her honesty and the risk she took to expose corruption. The story ended up as a case study. Law schools taught it as an example of property rights defense, business schools for corporate fraud, and political science classes for grassroots resistance. My grandfather's name was finally cleared. His environmental testimony became part of the official record, and a local historian even published a paper on how he'd helped save 3 counties' water supply. As for Robert, he lost his law firm partnership in the fallout, but he earned back some respect by cooperating fully and helping prevent more families from being harmed. He moved to another state and opened a small practice specializing in HOA dispute testing, using painful experience to help others. Sometimes, people do find redemption, even at great personal cost. Personally, I learned what it really means to stand up to bullies, the value of documentation, the power of truth, and the need for community support. But I also learned victory isn't clean. Some relationships never recovered. Landmark status raised my property taxes, and I still have to watch HOA elections closely to keep corruption from creeping back in. 6 months later, I hosted the first annual Lake Heritage Day. About 200 people came, supporters, curious neighbors, history buffs, and yes, a few protesters holding signs about property rights versus community needs. Not everyone agreed, and that felt strangely right. Kids played by the lake with Ranger, who'd become a local mascot since that viral video. A bluegrass band played on a small stage. Vendors sold food and crafts. The Historical Society set up displays about the wetlands my grandfather protected and the lives he'd indirectly saved. Standing by the water, I found myself looking at his favorite fishing spot. "Grandpa," I whispered, "this is what you fought for." Not perfect harmony, but the freedom to disagree and still protect what matters. Democracy is messy. It only works if people show up, speak out, and keep each other honest. The challenges aren't over. Landmark status means constant upkeep. Taxes are higher. HOA politics still need watching. Victory isn't the end of vigilancia, it just gives you something worth protecting. Then, last week, I got an email. Mr. Reed, I saw your story online. Our HOA is pressuring my grandfather to sell his ranch for a golf course. Could you share any legal strategies? It made me realize this problem is bigger than any single neighborhood. So, I started a website to share resources for anyone fighting HOA abuse. Looking at Ranger beside me, it hit me. Land ownership isn't just about what you build, it's about the responsibility you inherit to defend it. Fighting corruption never ends. Every generation has to keep pushing back. And that's the truth. One woman's obsession with power led to her downfall because she was reckless enough to live stream it. Sometimes the best way to beat a bully is to let them destroy themselves. Property rights matter. Documentation matters. And karma really does have a twisted sense of humor. If the story taught you anything about standing up to corruption, smash that like button so others can find it too. I'm your host at YaStories. Join me next time for another tale of justice served. Until then, keep fighting the good fight. What did we learn today? Maybe nothing. But it was one hell of a ride, wasn't it? Show some love with a like, and don't forget to subscribe to YaStories. I still can't wrap my head around the fact she actually called the cops on me. The president of the local HOA completely lost her composure when I wouldn't let her so-called VIP guests into my private lake ranch. This woman rolled up demanding entry to my family's century-old property like it was some public attraction. When I calmly told her no, she absolutely flipped out and dialed 911, claiming I was somehow blocking the community's rights on my own land. The nerve was unbelievable. But here's where it gets wild. Her entire tantrum was caught on camera, and it backfired in the most spectacular way you can imagine. You won't believe how this self-important HOA queen ended up embarrassing herself. By the way, BD Stories family, drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from. So let me paint the picture. I'm Jackson Reed, 35, a landscape architect who inherited this stunning 100-acre lake ranch from my grandfather 7 years back. It's been in our family since 1880, and honestly, these years have been the calmest and happiest of my life. My days start with the sound of geese over the water, coffee on the porch my great-grandfather built, and watching the sunrise cast golden light across the lake. Every evening, my golden retriever, Ranger, and I take a long walk around the property. And I swear, Ranger understands this place is sacred. My grandfather always told me, Jackson, this land isn't just dirt and trees, it's our family's spirit. Never let anyone bully that spirit away, no matter how fancy they look. So you can imagine my shock when last Saturday morning, what should have been another quiet day turned upside down. Out of nowhere, I hear this obnoxious honking echoing across the property. I look up to see a blinding neon pink SUV with gold accents speeding down my private driveway like it's being chased by the FBI. Ranger starts barking like crazy, and for a second, I thought it had to be an emergency. The SUV kicks up a massive cloud of dust before skidding to a stop in front of my house. And I remember thinking, this is either going to be hilarious or a nightmare. Out steps this woman dressed like she was heading to close a multi-million-dollar deal on Wall Street. Perfectly styled blonde hair that probably costs more to maintain than I spend on groceries in a month, a spotless white blazer, and those red-soled designer heels worth around $1,000. But what really got my attention was the oversized leather portfolio she was clutching, bulging with paperwork. Her smile had that look you see on a car salesman's face when they think they've found their next easy mark. She waves at me like we're lifelong friends and says, Mr. Reed, I'm Cassandra Kane, president of the Emerald Cove Estates Homeowners Association. Today's a very special day. For context, my land borders their neighborhood, but my family never joined their HOA. My grandfather made sure we stayed independent when they built this subdivision 2 decades ago. Then she opens her portfolio and pulls out what I can only describe as architectural fantasy plans. And these weren't small tweaks. They showed my property transformed into some kind of luxury resort, helipad, infinity pool, spa pavilions, and something labeled a VIP fishing lodge. I honestly thought I'd had too much coffee and was hallucinating. She starts pitching me her grand vision, hosting a green investment summit next month, bringing in around 50 investors and government officials, complete with helicopter arrivals, catered lakeside dinners, and exclusive fishing trips for wealthy environmentalists. The arrogance was something else. And then came the kicker. She hands me this contract thicker than a phone book, saying all I had to do was sign this exclusive licensing agreement for the laughable sum of $1 per year. Now, I'm pretty easygoing, but I'm not an idiot. If someone offers you $1 for something that's worth millions, you know there's a catch. So, I told her politely, "Ma'am, thank you, but this land has been in my family since 1880. And we're not interested in turning it into a resort or holding big events." I thought that would end it. I was dead wrong. It was like watching her mask crack in real time. Her smile twitched, her cheeks flushed bright red, and her voice jumped several octaves. "Mr. Reed, you don't grasp how important this is. These investors could bring millions to our community. You're standing in the way of progress." And then it got even stranger. She suddenly started ranting about how her family had supposedly deserved this land decades ago, and that my grandfather had wronged them somehow. She caught herself mid-rant, tried to recover, but the damage was done. This wasn't just about buzziness, it was personal. I stood up, and Ranger immediately moved closer, sensing the tension. "What exactly did my grandfather do?" I asked. She wouldn't answer, just stuffed her papers back into the portfolio and said, "Nothing. I just meant the community must come first. Expect to hear from my legal team, Mr. Reed." The way she said legal team gave me chills, but I wasn't about to be bullied off land my family has protected for generations. She stomped back to the pink SUV, turned around, and shouted, "You'll regret this, Mr. Reed. The community will know who's blocking their future." Then she tore off down my driveway like she was filming an action movie, sending gravel flying and leaving Ranger barking at the dust she kicked up. As I watched her disappear, it hit me this was only the start. I walked back inside and did what anyone would do these days. I looked her up online. What I found made my stomach drop. Article after article about property fights, lawsuits, and community controversies she'd been tangled up in. I kept digging into what I'd found online. Accusations of pressure tactics in residential areas, mysterious legal threats, and stories about families forced off their land. But what really made my blood run cold was the story of the Thompson family. They'd sold their farm for way below market value after what the article described as sustained community pressure incidents. The deeper I looked into public records, the more disturbing it got. Turns out, my grandfather had died of a heart attack just 3 days after speaking out at a city council meeting against a major development proposal. That proposal, it was backed by a company called Kane Development Group. And now, 25 years later, here was Cassandra Kane herself trying to take our land. Coincidence? I seriously doubted it. But there was one chilling detail in those old records that hinted my grandfather's death might not have been as simple as it seemed. Comment below. Would you have given in and sold the land, or done what I did and stood your ground? Here's the thing about modern warfare, it isn't fought with tanks or soldiers anymore. It's fought with smartphones, viral posts, and carefully edited videos. Lies spread faster than you can even blink. Within 24 hours of Cassandra's visit, my phone was blowing up with notifications. The Emerald Cove Estates community group had turned into ground zero for a smear campaign against me. It started off innocently, posts wondering about stagnant water issues and mosquito breeding grounds that might threaten our children. But it quickly escalated. Suddenly there were professional-looking photos of my property shot with moody, dark filters to make it look like a horror movie set. Ominous captions like "Is this safe for our community?" made it worse, and judging by the camera angles, someone had trespassed to take them. Then came the masterpiece, a dramatic investigative video posted in the neighborhood app. There was Cassandra herself, dressed like a field reporter, standing in front of my property, her expression deadly serious. Concerned citizens have raised important questions about the safety and environmental impact of this private waterfront property, she announced. As your HOA president, I believe community safety must come first. The video had dramatic music, flashing community safety alert banners, and slick editing. Right next to this, They posted glossy concept art for what they called the Emerald Cove Community Waterfront Park, families picnicking, children playing, elderly couples strolling by the lake. The message was clear: my land was dangerous and ugly, their plan was paradise. Even I caught myself thinking, does my property really look that bad? The comments rolled in fast. Why can't he just share? So selfish. Think about the children. Then it got creepier. One morning around 6 a.m., I caught a guy with a professional camera sneaking around, photographing my buildings. When I confronted him, he claimed to be an environmental inspector on a routine survey. Right. I might be a landscape architect, but I'm not stupid. Later that week, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, just a typed message: current property ownership may not comply with modern inheritance taxation requirements. Recommend immediate legal review to avoid potential criminal charges. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just an HOA power trip. Someone was digging into my grandfather's will and my inheritance paperwork. This was organized, well-funded, and personal. I decided to fight back. I installed security cameras around the property and it didn't take long to pay off. The same photographer returned, but this time he wasn't just taking pictures. I caught him staging them, moving dead branches closer to the water, dumping murky water to make the shoreline look stagnant, scattering litter. The big mistake: the shadows in his photos didn't match the time of day on the metadata. Plus, I had county water quality reports proving the lake was in pristine condition. While watching the footage, I noticed something odd. A young woman kept parking near my property, typing on a laptop. Each time, she looked more uncomfortably, shaking her head, checking her phone, hesitating. Her body language screamed guilt or doubt. It made me wonder if everyone in Cassandra's camp was as convinced as she was. Then Cassandra launched what she called Phase 2. A fake professional environmental assessment claiming urgent mitigation was needed, a petition to the city council about safety concerns, and thinly veiled legal threats for the good of the community. This wasn't amateur hour anymore. Someone was pouring real money into this operation. So, at night, I started building my defense. Timestamped videos, official water quality certificates, structural reports from the county assessor. I researched those other families Cassandra had mentioned, the Thompsons, the Millers, and the Browns. Every one of them had been hit with the same pattern of social media smear campaigns, fake safety violations, legal threats until they finally gave up and sold for a fraction of what their land was worth. And every time, the buyer turned out to be a shell company tied to development firms. This wasn't just harassment, it was a systematic scheme to pressure people into selling. Then, buried in the old county records, I found something about my grandfather's death that made my heart stop a broken bar. I found out my grandfather had died of a heart attack just 3 days after he publicly opposed a major development proposal at a city council meeting. The proposal, a flashy casino resort backed by none other than Kane Development Group. At the time, I'd chalked it up to coincidence, tragic, but random. But now, with everything happening, I was starting to see the pattern. The final straw was Cassandra's so-called final community notice, a professionally produced video, dark and ominous in tone, basically branding me the villain. This individual puts personal interests above community welfare. She just declared war publicly, and without hiding it. But here's the part she didn't see coming. While I was reviewing the mountain of surveillance footage I'd collected, I stumbled across something Cassandra really wouldn't want anyone to see, something that could destroy her if it ever came to light. BD Stories viewers, comment below, what do you think I found? 3 days after Cassandra posted that video, I got a certified letter that made my pulse spike. Mandatory attendance at special HOA emergency meeting regarding community safety concerns, scheduled for Thursday at 7 p.m. The agenda: discussion of immediate environmental and safety concerns affecting community welfare. Translation: a public execution disguised as democracy. When I walked into the community center, it felt like walking into a courtroom where I'd already been declared guilty. Cassandra had arranged the chairs like a tribunal, herself at a long table, a big presentation screen behind her, and a single empty chair facing the room clearly meant for me. About 40 residents had shown up, most of them looking uneasy and confused by the sudden drama. I spotted Eleanor Walshaw, a retired teacher, known for her blunt honesty, scribbling notes and eyeing the setup with suspicion. Then Cassandra started her performance. She wore a sharp navy suit that probably cost more than my truck payment, and delivered her opening statement like a prosecutor. "Tonight, we address serious environmental and safety concerns regarding a private waterfront property in our community." She clicked through her PowerPoint titled, "Community Environmental Safety Assessment, Immediate Action Required." The production value was off the charts. Aerial drone footage, which made me wonder how she'd even gotten permission, slick graphics, dramatic before and after slides. Slide after slide painted my property as a ticking environmental time bomb, stagnant water, collapsing structures, and expert commentary warning of catastrophic risk. It was total fiction, but it looked convincing. I watched neighbors I'd known for years start to nod along, caught up in the show. Then came the turning point. Lily, the young woman I'd noticed outside my property, clearly wrestling with guilt, was running the projector. Her hands were visibly shaking. When Cassandra demanded, "Show the budget slide, Lily," something unexpected happened. Instead of the usual pie charts and bullet points, the screen flashed with detailed payment records, $180,000 in the past 6 months to something called Grandview Development Consulting. Eleanor Walsh's hand shot up. "Excuse me, Cassandra, can you explain these payments?" As treasurer, I don't recall approving $180,000 in consulting fees. The room fell silent. Lily fumbled to switch slides, her face pale. Cassandra's carefully rehearsed composure cracked. "Those are routine administrative expenses. Proper documentation was filed with the treasurer." But Eleanor pressed on, voice calm but sharp. "I am the treasurer. These payments were never presented to the board." "Where did this funding come from?" Murmurs rippled through the room. You could feel the atmosphere shift, people starting to question everything. Then Cassandra made her fatal mistake. Cornered and frustrated, she ditched the mask completely. "The real issue here isn't finances, it's Mr. Reed's refusal to cooperate with legitimate community safety improvements." She turned and pointed at me, voice rising. "His obstruction threatens everyone's property values and family safety. If he keeps this up, the community will have no choice but to pursue legal remedies." We're talking about a $2.5 million lawsuit. $2.5 million. She said it in front of 40 witnesses. The number hung in the air, heavy as an axe. Some neighbors looked stunned. Others suddenly realized this was no small disagreement, it was an orchestrated takedown. But I was ready. I stood, walked to the front, and connected my laptop to the projector. "I'd like the community to see what's actually on my property," I said, and hit play. Up on the screen, footage I'd taken that very morning. Crystal clear lake water with geese gliding peacefully. Historic buildings standing solid and well maintained. Thriving trees and native plants. The difference from Cassandra's doomsday slides was so stark that a few people gasped out loud. Then I shared the county's certified water quality reports, all showing pristine conditions, and the structural inspection reports proving the old buildings weren't falling apart, they were, in fact, in excellent shape. And finally, I queued up the surveillance footage that changed everything. A broken bar I kept rolling. After showing the pristine conditions and certified reports, I played the compilation video that really turned the tide. Clear footage of Cassandra's hired photographer staging fake evidence, dragging debris into frame, snapping dramatic angles, even trespassing repeatedly to fake danger shots. The reaction in the room was instant. The murmurs shifted from worry about my property to real questions about Cassandra's methods. A young mother near the back raised her hand, voice uncertain. "Are you saying those photos were fake?" Eleanor was scribbling notes at double speed, and I caught several residents exchanging uneasy glances. Cassandra saw the narrative slipping away and launched into damage control. Her voice, once polished and steady, was now tight and sharp. "This meeting isn't about Mr. Reed's propaganda videos. Community safety requires immediate action, and I will not allow obstruction of legitimate safety measures." She was losing it, and the professional mask she'd kept so carefully was starting to crack in front of everyone. Then Eleanor made the motion that saved me. "Cassandra, I move to table any property-related decisions until we can properly audit these Grandview payments. The community deserves full transparency about where our fees are going." A low chorus of agreement rose around the room. Cassandra's carefully orchestrated show was crumbling right there under the fluorescent lights. With obvious frustration, Cassandra slammed her gavel. Meeting adjourned. The board will review these matters internally. No further discussion tonight. She packed up her files with clipped, angry movements, then stormed out, leaving behind a room full of confused residents and, for the first time, serious doubts. As everyone filed out, Lily approached me. Her hands were shaking. "Mr. Reed, a broken bar. What happened with that slide?" "It wasn't an accident." She handed me her business card, voice barely above a whisper. "Call me tomorrow. There's stuff you need to know." But what I didn't know yet was that Cassandra already had her lawyer read you, and what he was about to send would make me question whether fighting back was even possible. 2 days later, a FedEx truck stopped at my driveway. The driver handed me a manila envelope, embossed and heavy in my hands. Inside, 47 pages of legal documents from Steele Associates, litigation specialists. The cover letter was printed on thick letterhead with gold embossing, and every inch of it was designed to intimidate. At the top, in bold, immediate legal action, a property violations, community endangerment. Let me tell you, Harrison Steele did not mess around. The package even included his bio, a Harvard Law. Over 200 successful cases, specializing in crushing small property owners in complex property disputes. There were photos of his mansion, his luxury cars, his awards. Like a warning, this is who you're up against. The letter itself read like a sentencing order. "Dear Mr. Reed, you are hereby notified that our client, Emerald Cove Estates HOA, intends to pursue immediate legal action regarding your willful endangerment of community safety and deliberate harm to our client's reputation and business interests. A broken bar." The language made it sound like I was already guilty, but the real weapon was in the numbers. Environmental remediation costs, $800,000. Community property value diminishment, $900,000. Legal fees and punitive damages, $500,000. Mental anguish and emotional distress, $300,000. Total, $2.5 million. For someone like me, a landscape architect with a mortgage and modest savings, that figure might as well have been infinite. And the most chilling part came next. Additionally, recent investigations suggest potential irregularities in property inheritance documentation, title insurance fraud, and inheritance tax evasion carry criminal penalties, including property forfeiture and imprisonment up to 10 years. They weren't just threatening to bankrupt me, they were threatening to throw me in prison and take the last thing my grandfather left me. They gave me 48 hours to comply, sign a community access agreement, cease harassment of HOA operations, pay for an environmental assessment, and turn over full financial records. Refusal would mean immediate civil and criminal complaints. For the first time since this nightmare started, I truly felt afraid. I sat at my kitchen table, Ranger by my side, staring at the papers. The legal system is expensive and slow, and $2.5 million felt impossible to fight. I pulled out the old developer's offer letter from last year, $1.8 million for the entire property. After legal fees, it might be my only way out. I walked outside, to my grandfather's favorite spot by the water, the place where, as a kid, I'd listened to his stories about how this land had been in our family for generations. "Ranger," I whispered, scratching his ears. "Maybe we're fighting a battle we can't win. Grandpa wouldn't want me to lose everything over pride, right?" But deep down, I could still hear his voice, almost as if he was standing beside me. "Jackson, sometimes doing what's right costs more than doing what's easy. But this land isn't just dirt and water, it's the soul of our family. Don't let them take it, no matter how big they look." That's when my phone buzzed. It was Lily, voice hushed and trembling. "Jackson, don't respond to the legal letters yet. Meet me tonight. Bring a USB drive. What I have to show you changes everything." Her words came out fast, like she was afraid of being overheard. "Cassandra made me do something today that crossed every line I have. I can't keep quiet anymore." At 9 p.m., I met Lily in a deserted parking lot near the lake. She showed up in an old Honda, eyes darting around like she expected to see headlights pulling in behind her. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Jackson, Today Cassandra forced me to create a fake safety report about kids playing near dangerous water on your land. She told me to Photoshop stock photos of children onto your property. She planned to file it with Child Protective Services. Tears welled up in her eyes. I became a broken bar. I signed up as a marketing coordinator to help the community, Lily said, voice breaking, not to hurt innocent families. When Cassandra told me to fake evidence that could get kids taken from their parents a broken bar, I knew I couldn't be part of this anymore. The USB drive she pressed into my hand felt heavier than gold. On it was everything. Cassandra's emails with Steele strategizing their intimidation campaign, financial records showing those grand view payments, raw footage proving the supposed damage had been staged, and phone recordings outlining what they openly called pressure tactics to push owners off their land. But the most damning file was a recording. Cassandra's voice came through, cold and unmistakable.